The story begins as Lindy explains that she still believes in love and marriage, even though her husband Les shrunk her accidentally with his latest invention. She grabs onto an electrical wire trying to escape, but slips and falls. We jump back 2 weeks. Les and Lindy are at dinner, celebrating their anniversary. They make promises to be better versions of themselves in the coming year. Lindy has a surprise. She's planned a Vermont trip for them and their friends, wanting to renew their vows and start fresh. Les is touched that Gary and Meg are skipping Cabo to be there, and promises to reach out to their daughter Lulu, who has gone quiet on them. Les then shares his own news. He's listed their house with a plan to buy it back, determined to chase his career dreams one last time. He asks Lindy for patience, promising they'll move back to their gray house by year's end, provided he lands an investment from Hilton Smith. They reconcile that night, and Les feels the relief of being welcomed home. Next morning, Les pitches his cell reduction machine to Hilton, shrinking a corn cob live to prove it works. Hilton is impressed but holds back. Les owns nothing of his past failures, yet Hilton respects the stubbornness. He wants to see more of who Les really is before committing. Across town, Lindy meets Richie at a bookstore. He gushes over her one published book from 18 years ago. She ends the affair right there, telling him she's choosing her marriage. Richie hands her a parting gift before she goes. Back in her car, Lindy opens it and freezes. Richie has submitted a story he found among her things to the New York Times, and it belongs to her student, not her. She calls her agent Terry immediately, gets voicemail, and leaves a panicked message. Then she drives straight to Jackie's place, praises the story, and pushes her to turn it into a novel. She tells Jackie to take the semester off, disappear to her uncle's cabin in Montana, and write. Jackie agrees without hesitation. At the lab, Martin is furious that Les invited Hilton to their charity party that evening. He reminds Les of last year's disaster, where both he and Lindy drank too much and made a scene. Les brushes it off and rushes to call Lindy, getting no answer. He runs into Richard on the way out, who declines the invitation. Meanwhile, Terry finally calls Lindy back. She's thrilled, thinking Lindy is back to writing. When Lindy confesses the truth, Terry turns cold. She demands the mess gets cleaned up before it blows up into a scandal. That evening, Lindy arrives home to find Starla, Les's secretary, waiting. Starla hands her a dress and tells her to smile and play the supportive wife. Lindy snaps, asking for a moment to breathe. At the party, a journalist corners Lindy looking for a scoop on Les's work. Already on her first drink, Lindy shuts it down and slips away to the back, where she runs straight into Hilton. Not knowing who he is, she talks freely, calling Les a fake philanthropist and a workaholic, but a genius all the same. Les spots them from across the room mid-speech, and Starla confirms his worst fear. He cuts the speech short and rushes over. He introduces Lindy and quietly asks her to leave. Then comes the shock. Hilton agrees to invest, crediting Lindy's honesty as the deciding factor. The catch is that his chief scientist joins the lab full-time as part of the deal. Upstairs, Les fumes, convinced Hilton's scientist is there to steal everything he's built. Lindy calms him, reminds him of everything he's already achieved, and tells him he's going to change the world. Les lights up, then cancels Vermont on the spot. He wants to get back to the lab immediately, suggesting they push the vow renewal to next year and send their friends gifts as an apology. Lindy tries to reason with him. He's already gone. Furious, she calls Richie and invites him to Vermont. He calls it a Christmas miracle. They agree to meet at a nearby hotel in a few hours. On her way out, Lindy tells Starla to clear the party and then gives the journalist the interview of his career. At the lab, Les discovers Martin has already signed the deal behind his back. Vivian, Hilton's scientist, tells him she starts the next morning and doesn't bother to soften the news. Les grabs his latest invention and heads home. He finds Lindy packed and ready to walk out. They argue while he loads lab equipment into the freezer, the fight spiraling from the interviews she gave Nils all the way into their marriage and careers. Neither holds back. In the middle of the argument, Les accidentally activates the miniaturizing device. Lindy picks it up without thinking, still mid-rant. In a flash of anger, Les presses the button. The device sprays liquid on her, and she shrinks. She passes out. When she comes to, Les is relieved. She isn't. Panicked, she runs, hits a chair leg, and passes out again. She wakes up inside the dollhouse surrounded by notes telling her to stay calm. She gets up, makes coffee, and everything feels normal until Les opens the dollhouse door and she's staring up at a giant. Les explains the accident. Even now, he can't quite hide his amazement at what his invention has done. Lindy cuts straight to the point and asks how he fixes it. He says he can reverse it. The problem is he hasn't worked out how yet. To soften the blow, he's prepared a Christmas breakfast for her. He promises a solution in a few days, 2 at most, and assures her the dollhouse has everything she needs. It's modeled exactly after their real home, and he's already shrunk her clothes and essentials. Lindy explodes. She rages, then breaks down, and asks for a moment alone. Across town, Richard sits waiting. It slowly sinks in that Lindy isn't coming. He calls her repeatedly, gets nothing, then tries the office and finds Les unreachable too. Back home, Lindy pulls herself together and talks to Les. She's hurt that he kept his work secret. He points out he had shown her miniaturized objects over the past 3 years. She just hadn't connected the dots. He has to go to the lab. Lindy isn't happy, but he talks her into staying put. Before he heads out, he takes her on a ride around the room on the toy train. She gets a headache and he leaves her a tablet, but it's enormous, so she licks it instead. He makes sure she's fed and settled. While she eats, a memory surfaces. She's back at a family dinner where everyone is talking about her book being adapted for the screen. Her mother isn't impressed, dismissing the book and resenting how it portrays her. Lindy insists it's fiction. The argument shifts to whether her biological father left or was pushed out. That evening, Les reassures Lindy that she is nothing like her mother. Later, after she falls asleep, Les gets a call and slips out to the lab. He's already running behind when he spots Mr. Magoo, their cat, creeping toward the dollhouse. He grabs the cat and takes him along, uneasy about leaving Lindy alone. In the office car park, Richard appears. He asks about Lindy. Les keeps it casual, says she's home writing, and moves on. Inside the dollhouse, Lindy wakes to find Les's note and a Space Colonel toy left beside her. At the lab, Martin pulls Les aside. He's signed a 30-day contract with Hilton on the strength of Les's word. Missed the deadline and Hilton sues for fraud and takes over everything. Jail is on the table. The clock is ticking. Down the hall, Janet tries to get Richard's attention. He doesn't notice. His mind is still on Lindy. Back at the dollhouse, Lindy tries to settle in. It doesn't go smoothly. She ends up spending most of the day talking to the Space Colonel toy. At the lab, the team runs their first test. The corn cob restores briefly, then explodes. Bob calls it a qualified win. Vivian steps in and announces that nothing moves without her sign-off from now on. Martin pulls her aside. Les stands there, stunned by the new rules. When Martin can't push back, Les tries reaching Hilton directly and gets nowhere. Vivian shuts the work down. Les snaps at her. Martin reminds him they have 29 days left, and Les starts to unravel. By evening, Lindy is restless. She tries every door in the dollhouse and finds them all locked. Les left a note saying it's for her own protection. Then a housefly gets in through the window. At her size, it's terrifying. She smashes through a wall to get away, and that's what sends her tumbling off the electrical cord. In the background, Les's voice calls out telling her to hold on. In a flashback 22 years ago, Lindy is deep in writing her novel, and Les is fully in her corner, locking her in the office at her own request and cheering her through every stage of the process. Back in the present, Lindy wakes up in the dollhouse to a ringing phone. It's Les. He tells her the broken wall is patched and she's safe. She asks to come to the lab with him. He says no, suggests she explore the dollhouse instead, and promises he's close to a breakthrough. Alone, Lindy takes a breath and starts poking around the new additions Les has made. She ends up in the closet, trying on miniaturized dresses to pass the time. At the lab, Martin pulls Les aside and warns him to stop wasting energy fighting Vivian. When Les casually asks what miniaturizing a human would do, Martin goes still. He reminds him they haven't reached human trials and that animals come first. He tells Les to stay focused on the restoration formula. Les heads to his office and finds Vivian already there, laying out the new rules and asking for full transparency. Back in the dollhouse, Lindy is trying on the dress she wore the night she won her Pulitzer. The memory takes her back to that evening, when she and Terry were celebrating and Les was beaming beside her. Then she remembers Terry. She doesn't have the number memorized, so she uses the landline to call Les and ask for it. Les tells her to hold on and accidentally lets slip that he can see her. She's been watched the whole time. She also catches that he's now asking for 4 days, not 2. That pulls up another memory. The night of the Pulitzer, Les had asked her to move to New York so he could chase his scientific ambitions. 2 or 3 years, he said. She agreed, thinking the break would only build anticipation for her next book. At the lab, Les tries to access the chemical room and his card gets rejected. Vivian has downgraded his clearance to basic employee level. He's furious. While Lindy sits with the weight of all his broken timelines, Richard shows up at the house. Before he can get in, Lulu pulls up. She sends him off, suspicious of why he's there, then heads inside and notices nothing out of place. Les confronts Vivian at the lab over the new restrictions, then tries a different approach, offering partnership instead. He shows her the miniaturized Mr. Magoo, and she softens immediately. She agrees to help him get around the protocols and offers to monitor the cat's vitals while he chases his latest idea. He rushes home to grab a few things. The moment he's distracted, Lindy slips out of the dollhouse. She overhears Lulu venting to Les about her, calling her a hurricane. Les tries to slow her down but doesn't stop her. When Richard's name comes up, Les calls him harmless and tells Lulu that Lindy has gone to the gray house. He steers her away from the dollhouse. Lindy quietly climbs into his briefcase. Later, Lulu stumbles on the notes Les left in the dollhouse and assumes they're one of his strange habits. Meanwhile, Terry tries to contain the plagiarism situation and hits a wall. The timing is terrible, right as she's trying to launch her own imprint. At the lab, Les warns Richard to stay away from the house, and they run another test. The corn holds for 30 seconds this time before exploding. Lindy, watching from the briefcase, realizes in that moment that she is the corn. She makes enough noise to draw Les into his office. She confronts him directly, threatens to go public, and he finally tells her the truth. It could take months. It could take years. He says he's making progress and asks her to trust him. He puts her in his desk drawer. She agrees to stay, but only if he stops watching her and locks nothing. She also wants a working laptop and her favorite lipstick. In the drawer, she finds Les's phone. She calls Terry, who tells her nothing is resolved. Terry wants to walk away from their arrangement, so Lindy makes it simple. If the plagiarism becomes public, Terry goes down with her. Terry hangs up newly motivated and tells her assistant to contact Jackie. Lindy then calls Richard. He's standing right there in the lab with Les and the team. She tells him everything. He can't react. He hangs up and tells the room it was a family emergency. On the drive home, Les apologizes. They agree that telling Lulu would only hurt her, and they already know she'd find a way to make it Lindy's fault. They pull out their therapist's book looking for a way through. Back at the lab, Vivian quietly researches Les. She's drawn to him, already imagining a future, and she's genuinely attached to Mr. Magoo, keeping close watch over him. At home, Lindy settles back into the dollhouse. The next morning, there's a knock at the door. She opens it to find a miniaturized Richard standing there. She's surprised, but glad she's no longer alone. In a flashback 7 months ago, Lulu graduates valedictorian and delivers a speech that has Lindy beaming and Les shifting in his seat. Back in the present, Lindy is genuinely relieved to see Richard. She tucks him in the closet before Les comes in. Les wants to talk, and they both try to use what therapy has taught them. He promises to speak with Lulu, though not about the accident. They agree to parent as a team from here on. Les heads to the office, and the moment he's gone, Lindy and Richard are free. They wander through the Christmas decorations, Richard rigs a staircase out of the dollhouse, and they zip around on a mini-scooter. Lindy feels something she hasn't felt in a while, free. At the lab, Les is distracted when he notices Richard hasn't come in. He pushes through more formulas anyway. When Hilton drops by and insists on a lunch break, Les bristles. Vivian quietly tells him to go with it. Across town, Lulu runs into her old high school friend Steffi, who invites her to a party. Lulu hesitates, and Steffi tells her to stop expecting the worst from everything. Back at the house, Richard tries to make things feel romantic, but a housefly keeps getting in the way. Lindy is glad he brought a phone, until she realizes he has no actual plan for getting her back to normal. He assumed Les would handle it while he kept her company. At Terry's office, she sits down with Jackie and quietly slips an NDA into the book deal. Terry's cousin, who happens to be a lawyer, catches it immediately and shuts it down. The story goes viral anyway, and Terry panics. She ends up vending to a stranger, a cowboy, who just listens. At the lab, Vivian gives Les an update on Mr. Magoo, and things are looking stable. Les opens up about his marriage and mentions they've been going to therapy. Vivian shares a little about her own past relationships. Then Mr. Magoo has a seizure. Les panics and Vivian tells him she'll handle it. Les rushes to check the cameras for Lindy and can't find her anywhere. She's there, but she's hiding, angry at Richard for showing up without a real solution. While she sits with it, a memory comes back. The day after Lulu's graduation, Lindy invited her out for milkshakes to celebrate. Lulu said no. Then Lindy found out Les had already lined up Lulu's entire summer, including an internship, without saying a word to her. She walked out, got milkshakes alone, and that's when she met Richard. He knew her book inside out and made her feel visible in a way she hadn't in years. Back in the present, the housefly finds its way into the dollhouse again. This time Lindy doesn't run. She fights back and kills it. At the lab, Les can't focus. Martin is stunned to watch him walk out the door with the deadline looming. Behind them, Hilton and Vivian quietly debate whether to cut Les loose once the work is done. Hilton thinks he won't cooperate with their plans. Vivian says she can bring him around. On his way out, Les spots Nils and assumes he's come for a follow-up story. Nils tells him he's working on something much bigger, which stops Les cold. At the party, Lulu creates a scene. To be fair, someone else started it. Lulu just made sure to finish it. Back at the house, Richard makes up for his lack of planning by tracking down Lindy's phone and handing it over. While they settle in, Les's mother arrives to clean the house and check on Mr. Magoo. Les sees her and freezes, terrified she may have accidentally swept Lindy up. He rifles through the rubbish and tells her not to move anything while he searches. He can't find Lindy anywhere, and his worry tips into dread when he spots the dead fly outside the dollhouse with a small note, "Don't freak out." We go back 1 year to a therapy session. Dr. Carmichael asks both of them to describe their childhoods. Les calls his happy. Lindy calls hers cold. When the doctor pushes for more, Les insists everything was perfect growing up. Lindy tells him he's fooling himself and that his mother simply shielded him from reality his whole life. Back in the present, Lindy pulls Richard into her plan and the two of them set up a little life among the Christmas decorations around the house. Les tries using Lindy's laptop as a lure to find her. Since she already has her phone, she doesn't take the bait. When Lindy turns her phone on, it's flooded with missed calls from Terry and notifications about the story going viral. Everyone loves it. Lindy feels a swell of pride she knows she hasn't earned. She calls Terry, who tells her to sit still and let her handle it. Terry fills her in on what happened with Jackie and mentions a cowboy she vented to. She begs Lindy not to do anything until the Jackie situation is sorted. After hanging up, Lindy spots an invitation from the Today Show. Richard points out that on video she'll appear full-size. Lindy books the interview. Meanwhile, Les covers the living room floor in tape to avoid stepping on Lindy by accident. His mother Nancy watches him and quietly starts to wonder about his mental state. He tells her he's secretly renovating and asks her to stay downstairs. From above, Lindy and Richard watch Nancy and Les together. Richard finds himself missing his own mother. Lindy watches Nancy and wishes for something she never had. Les tries to ease Nancy out the door. She doesn't buy it and stays put. Upstairs, Richard walks Lindy through the square cube law and convinces her she's stronger than she thinks. She climbs up to the counter and spots a family photo from a few Christmases back. It was the year they gave Lulu the dollhouse. In the photo, Lulu kept telling everyone her dad was always at work and her mom just watched television, no matter how many times Lindy tried to redirect her. Across town, Lulu wakes up at Steffi's with a pounding head. She's not thrilled to find Steffi's roommate there. Before she heads out, she notices Lindy's book left behind for her. She goes home and comes clean to Nancy about everything, including dropping out of college and wanting nothing to do with science. Nancy listens and tells her to read Lindy's book. At the lab, Les tells Martin that Lindy is at the Gray House. On their way in, they spot Nels having coffee with Bob from the lab. Later, Les corners Bob and demands to know what he said. Bob explains he was talking about his brother-in-law's company, which Hilton bought out, pushed the founder away from, and allegedly took the technology without proper means. Vivian walks in before Bob can finish. Back at the house, Lindy slips back into the dollhouse and hypes herself up for the interview. We flash back 10 years to a dinner with friends that turns into an argument. Les feels it's his turn to chase the Nobel Prize now that his GMO tomato project is done. Lindy feels it's her turn to focus on her next book. Neither backs down. They end up in bed together anyway. In the present, Vivian gives Les a good update on Mr. Magoo. The two share a moment of quiet flirtation, and something clicks for Les. An idea hits. Something clicks for Lulu too, mid-book. Then a friend texts her about her mother's interview on the Today Show. Lulu is stunned. She didn't even know her mom had written something new. Nancy and Lulu both notice it looks like Lindy is filming from the upstairs office. Lulu goes to check and finds Jackie's original draft sitting there. At the lab, Les starts nodding off at his desk. Then Martin mentions the interview, and Les is wide awake. He races home and finds Lindy. She confronts him about the tape all over the floor. While they talk, Nancy walks in, sees Lindy, and faints. The noise brings Lulu upstairs. Les sends her to get medicine. When Nancy comes around, she lets Les have it. She's furious he lied to her and did this to Lindy. Then she turns the blame on herself, admitting she protected him so fiercely that she unknowingly shaped him into the same controlling man his father was. She tells him he has to come clean to Lindy about why he really shrunk her, or he will lose her for good. She storms out, but not before telling him the truth about his father. Les sits in his car and cries. He records a voicemail for Lindy. In it, he says he loves her and then admits he miniaturized her on purpose. Lulu finds him there and assumes Lindy has left them both. That's why he's breaking down. Les says nothing to correct her, and she gets angry. We flash back 7 years. A young Lulu stumbles across one of her mother's drafts. It's about a mother who struggles to connect with her daughter. Lulu takes it personally, convinced it's about her, and that's where the distance between them begins. She deletes the whole thing before leaving. In the present, Lindy wakes up in good spirits. She makes Richard breakfast as a thank you and tells him she's done fighting her situation. She's choosing to embrace it in the new year with it. At the lab, the team runs test after test and keeps hitting dead ends. Through it all, Les and Vivian keep finding small moments to flirt between failed attempts. Hilton stops by and invites them both to an event at his place that evening. Les gets a message from Lindy saying she's forgiven him and asking him to come to the dollhouse because she has an anniversary gift. It takes him back to a dinner years ago when he showed up late and Lindy let it go without a fight. He goes home and walks straight into a shock. Lindy is there with a naked Richard. She hasn't forgiven him at all. She wants him to feel exactly what betrayal looks like. As the confrontation escalates, Richard realizes he's been used as a prop in Lindy's payback plan. Les snaps. He grabs Richard, covers him in honey and breadcrumbs, and leaves him for the pet bird. Richard tries to explain himself, but Les is past listening. He locks Lindy in the dollhouse, throws a blanket over it, and cuts the power. Everything goes dark. Lindy breaks out and goes looking for Richard. When she finds the birdhouse knocked over and spots bloodstains, she fears the worst. While searching, her phone lights up with messages from Terry. Lulu has gone on TikTok and exposed her mother as a fraud. The Today Show issues an on-air apology for having had Lindy on. Everything Lindy feared is now happening in real time, and Lulu is feeding off the attention it brings her. At Hilton's party, Les is put on the spot and made to present the miniaturization and restoration work. He's terrified of being accused of fraud. Vivian tells him it's under control. She also promises to manage Nils if he starts digging into Hilton's business. After the event, she slips away to meet Nils in private. At the presentation, Les steadies himself when he spots a former Nobel Prize winner in the room who also sits on the committee. He, Vivian, and Janet pull off the demonstration by removing the corn cob before it can blow. Elsewhere, Terry sits in her office grieving her career. Her assistant tries to lift her mood and shows her a gift that arrived from the cowboy. Then Lindy calls. Terry tells her the Pulitzer Committee is considering taking back her award. She's also ready to cut ties entirely, both professionally and personally. Lindy pleads. Terry holds firm. Her boss steps in and pushes them both toward one last option: get Jackie on board. After everything, Lindy finds Richard. He's alive. He's also done. He tells her exactly how it felt to be used, then closes with something honest and a little sad. He hopes Les figures out the restoration before the 30-day window closes. Lindy stops cold. 30 days. She had no idea there was a deadline, and she does the math fast. 22 days remain, and Les never said a word. Richard asks for space. Lindy starts thinking about her next move. Lulu, meanwhile, is riding the wave. She's out, she's celebrating, and her phone won't stop buzzing. Steffi pulls her aside and tells her she's going too far and needs to think about what she's doing to her mother. Lulu doesn't slow down, and the night ends with her and Steffi's roommate together. Les gets home and it hits him. He went too far with Richard. He sits with the guilt until he spots Richard on a video call with Janet, very much alive and pretending he's on a farm somewhere. Richard asks about progress. Janet brings up Hilton's party. Lindy is already moving. She tucks the pet bird under Les's pillow. Then she burns the dollhouse down. She finds him and makes herself clear. She knows about the 30-day deadline. She knows he kept it from her. And she's not hiding anymore. She tells him she's coming for him, and she means every word. Les dreams Lindy is back to normal. In the dream, she calls him a fraud and tells him he'll end up alone. He jolts awake to her actual voice coming through the house intercom. She's taken it over. She keeps him up all night. By morning, she's still at it, narrating his shower and making it clear he's not going anywhere. She has a mountain of tissues delivered to the house, enough to last over 6 months. She also reminds him that calling the police isn't really an option, given what he'd have to explain. Les drags himself to the lab anyway, visibly worn down. Martin picks up on it immediately. The situation just got worse. Hilton has pushed the investor presentation to the following day. They now have 24 hours to crack the restoration formula. Les still holds onto the idea of a Nobel Prize. Martin tells him plainly that the only thing ahead of them right now is prison. Back home, Terry calls Lindy and tells her to turn on the Today Show. Jackie is on, and the plagiarism question is about to come up. Steffi shakes Lulu awake to watch. Lulu's jaw drops when Jackie goes on air and insists that Lindy is the real author, clearly full of admiration for her. Lindy and Terry both exhale. Then Jackie's lawyer gets on the phone with Terry and makes it clear that Jackie's cooperation comes with a price. The moment the interview ends, the internet turns on Lulu. At the lab, Les figures out that the corn cob needs to hold for 3 full minutes without exploding to reach stable restoration. The problem is he still doesn't have the equation to make that happen. Vivian offers her place if he needs somewhere to sleep. He tells her he can't, that Lindy is expecting him home. Lindy watches the trolls pile onto Lulu and picks up the phone. Steffi talks Lulu into going home. Lulu walks through the door and stops when she sees her mother. They sit down and actually talk, maybe for the first time in years. The resentment that only ever ran one way comes out into the open, and they both realize how much they share. Lindy owns her mistakes. Lulu confesses she read the Darling Daughter draft years ago and believed it was about her. Lindy tells her it was always about her own mother, never about Lulu. That lands. Lulu keeps going and admits she despises science and is on the verge of being expelled. Across town, Richard is losing hope until Janet calls. She fills him in and tells him to reach out to Les and get him focus. Vivian overhears and notices Janet seems unusually cheerful. The two women connect over a shared weakness for unavailable men. At the supermarket, Les wanders the aisles and briefly considers buying mousetraps. He gets home and walks into Lulu and Lindy mid-conversation. Lulu turns on him immediately, furious about the lies. Les deflects and points at Lindy. They start going at each other and Lulu walks out of the room and lets them sort it themselves. Lindy tells Les they have to do better as parents. A moment later, they're both in the bathroom holding Lulu's hair back while she's sick. After, the three of them quietly agree to try harder as a family. Lindy tells Les she believes he'll work it out. They send Lulu off reassured, telling her everything will be fine. The second Lulu is gone, the truce collapses. Les accuses Lindy of deliberately turning Lulu against him. Lindy is stunned, especially since she told Lulu the shrinking was an accident. She tells him he earned Lulu's disappointment all on his own, and he needs to sit with that. He grabs her and dangles her over the toilet. She stares him down and dares him to do it. He comes close. She breaks free and vanishes before he can find her. Lulu heads back to school. Les digs a small grave in the yard for the pet bird. Richard steps out of hiding and apologizes to Les for developing real feelings for Lindy. Les is visibly relieved when Richard confirms nothing actually happened between them. The tension between the two men dissolves fast. They get back to the formula. Richard warns Les to watch his back because Lindy is not finished. Les thinks about it for a second, then says he can't wait. Hilton and Vivian sit down with a military general and lay out how the miniaturization technology could transform weapons and warfare. Martin is nearby and catches every word. Back at the house, Lindy gears up like she's heading into battle. Les does the same on his end, flooding the bedroom to protect his workspace while he grinds away at the formula. Lindy has no choice but to crawl through the vents to reach him. Richard tries to talk her out of it. She warns him once, he doesn't listen, and she puts him down. For Lindy, destroying Les's shot at a Nobel Prize is worth more than waiting to be restored. The episode becomes a full war between them. Lindy cuts off his sleep, engineers falls, builds weapons out of whatever she can find around the house, and through it all they keep arguing about the marriage, their careers, and Lulu. Vivian shows up in the middle of the night to remind Les the presentation is in the morning. Lindy tries to get Vivian's attention. Les knocks her out before she can. After he leaves, Lulu calls Lindy with an update on her review board hearing. Lindy tells her to go in, be honest, and say exactly what she's been struggling with. Lulu does. She stands in front of the board and tells them the truth about not knowing what she wants. After, she texts Steffi and asks her to pick her up from the airport. Meanwhile, Jackie's lawyer arrives at Terry's office with an offer and a deadline from her boss. In a twist, it turns out the cowboy is Mel's father. Terry looks at everything in front of her and chooses herself. At the presentation venue, the generals and Hilton are watching the clock. Outside, Martin pulls Les aside. He tells him the formula isn't ready, and more than that, they can't be part of selling this technology to the military. Les hesitates. Time runs out on the decision. He walks in anyway and starts talking about the wonder of science in a way that leaves the whole room confused. Then mid-presentation, a memory surfaces, Lindy flipping a serviette upside down, and it hits him. The answer is inversion. The new equation works. The room erupts, everyone except Martin. Then Les's phone buzzes. Lindy has sent an exposé to Nils and copied Les on it. He panics. When he mentions Nils to Vivian, she tells him to relax. She explains that Nils isn't a problem anymore. She miniaturized him and has been keeping him hidden in the lab. She asks Les who is threatening him and suggests he think creatively about how to handle it. At home, Lindy opens champagne and waits to hear from Nils. Les walks in with a restored Mr. Magoo. He puts the cat down and lets it loose, knowing it will hunt Lindy. He's decided she will never stop coming for him. At the lab, Vivian tells Hilton she wants to keep Les and believes she can bring him over to their side. Hilton isn't convinced. She heads off to dinner with Les and realizes quickly she miscalculated. He talks about himself the entire time and keeps crediting Lindy for everything he's achieved. Jealousy and frustration build until Vivian subtly lets him go. Les doesn't pick up on it. She stands up mid-dinner and walks out. He heads to the office later and finds himself locked out. His belongings are scattered across the lobby floor. Vivian's only concern is Mr. Magoo. When Les confesses he never liked the cat because it was always Lindy's, something shifts in her. She's stunned. Les tries to drive straight into the building. It doesn't work. Martin finds him outside and reminds him he was warned this would happen. Les admits out loud that he always knew the Nobel was out of reach. He just wanted to finish what he started, believing that completing his life's work would finally make him enough for Lindy. Mid-conversation, it hits him. He left Mr. Magoo in the house with Lindy. He turns to Martin and asks him to get him home fast. Inside the house, Lindy stays one step ahead of the cat. Then Mr. Magoo finds Richard, and he's cornered. Another flashback from 20 years ago. Les proposes to Lindy the same day she finds out her novel is getting published. They look at each other and decide that getting married feels like the perfectly unconventional thing to do. 6 months later, Lindy is deep in wedding planning and chasing the idea of a perfect day. The first crack appears when the wedding planner, Alex, assumes Lindy's stepdad will walk her down the aisle. Lindy makes it clear that role belongs to her biological father. She also needs her parents nowhere near each other. The pressure is already building before the rehearsal dinner even starts, and Les tries to keep her steady. Martin is first through the door and quietly tells Les they were passed over by an investor. Les keeps it from Lindy and tells her everything is fine. Then Diane and Walt arrive. Diane wastes no time finding fault with everything around her. She announces that her ex Jim won't show up and that Walt will be stepping in as father of the bride, whether Lindy wants that or not. As the evening moves along, guests are asked to share what they believe makes a marriage work. Diane's answer is that it doesn't. Terry arrives and shows Lindy a mock-up of what her book will look like. Les notices and bristles at her working on a night like this. Terry pulls Lindy aside and asks if she's really sure about getting married, reminding her she once swore she never would. Lindy puts it down to being young and not knowing herself yet. The party finds its rhythm, but Lindy keeps glancing at the door waiting for her father. A problem surfaces in the kitchen, and she handles it quietly. Terry circles back and asks the same question again. Before Lindy can answer, Diane cuts in, reminding her that her father has always let her down, then turns it around and criticizes Lindy for not helping Les host. Across the room, Lindy's sister clocks her boyfriend Tim chatting up another woman. The speeches carry on, guest after guest describing Lindy and Les as made for each other. Then Jim walks in. He delivers the best speech of the night, warm and funny and completely unexpected. Afterwards, he tells Lindy how proud he is and mentions he read an advance copy of her book. Diane hears that and snaps. She snatches the book and starts reading it aloud. The moment she recognizes herself in the mother character, she gets angrier. Everyone tries to get the book back at once, and in the chaos, Diane accidentally stabs both Les and Jim. Jim and Walt go at each other. Then the mothers join in. The whole evening collapses. Afterwards, Les and Lindy sit together laughing at the wreckage her family left behind. Then Lindy says she's marrying him partly to escape all of that, and the smile drops from his face. She tells him she loves him, but he brings up the working during the party. They start arguing properly, with Lindy saying out loud that the marriage was never meant to be conventional, just the two of them being defiant. He finds her vow draft and sees a single sentence. He walks out, and Lindy is left wondering if there will even be a wedding. She ends up at the bar and runs into Jim. He tells her a story framed as if it's from a film, but they both know it's his own life. Lindy sees through it and doesn't say so, and somehow it still makes her feel better. Meanwhile, Diane finds Les crying in his car. She tells him about surviving after Jim left, and then suggests that what looks like coldness in Lindy might just be fear. She tells him to go fix it. The next morning, Lindy gets ready with shaking hands, not certain Les will come. Her vows still aren't written. She almost talks herself into leaving. Then Les appears, and instead of heading to the venue, they go to a pizza place. They sit across from each other and say the things they haven't said. Les tells her he genuinely wants to marry her and asks why she said yes when it went against everything she believed. Lindy tells him the truth. She was afraid of losing him, that he's brilliant and she believed in him completely, and she couldn't understand why someone like him would choose her. They decide to elope and get married at the Grey House with only a few friends watching. Lindy pulls Richard away from Mr. Magoo just in time. She gets the cat locked in the birdcage, patches Richard up, and genuinely apologizes to him. Then she asks for his help getting on TikTok. She records a video owning her mistakes and voluntarily gives back her Pulitzer. At the airport, Lulu sees the video pop up on her phone and finds her friend already there waiting. Both land at the same time. Les gets home, finds the cat secured, and immediately asks Lindy for a chance to explain. He needs her help getting back into the lab to create the formula, restore her, and destroy everything before Hilton hands the technology over to the military. She's the only one they won't see coming. He tells her that once she's restored, he wants to work on their marriage. She agrees to the plan and tells him the marriage is done. Les is gutted and tries to make sense of everything that happened. They bring Richard, Martin, and Janet into the plan. Lindy gets smuggled inside the lab inside a pizza box. Janet carries it in, and Vivian doesn't think twice about it, even helping herself to a few slices. Once inside, the plan falls apart immediately. Hilton has already taken all the formula vials. They regroup fast. Les decides he has to get into the lab and make a new batch from scratch. Meanwhile, Janet discovers she can't wipe the server because Hilton and Vivian have already changed all the passwords. On top of that, Hilton has miniaturized an entire collection of military tanks and weapons. They pivot again. Janet quietly cranks up the pressure valves to buy less time inside the lab before everything blows. Before she gets out, Richard stops her and tells her how he feels. She listens, then goes. Janet sneaks Les in. Lindy is almost clear when Vivian spots her. Les, racing against the clock, finishes the formula with unexpected help from Lulu, who photographs the equations off his bedroom wall and sends them through. The problem is the last equation, and Les isn't certain it's right. He tells the others it's fine. On the way out he walks straight into Vivian, and she has Lindy. He loses focus and the vials slip, dropping into the narrow gap at the edge of the elevator shaft. Lindy electrocutes Vivian, who drops immediately. The vials are deep in the elevator duct. Lindy prepares to go down after them. Les miniaturizes himself and goes with her. The rest of the group, including a groggy Vivian, clear the building. Outside, Lulu waits with her stomach in knots. Then Les and Lindy emerge together, vials in hand, just as the building goes up behind them. They move fast before the police arrive. Back home, Les comes clean about the last equation. He doesn't know if it works. He offers to go first and find out. Lulu decides this is also the moment to tell everyone she's been expelled. They sit him in the bathtub, apply the formula, and hold their breath. He comes back full size and in one piece. They restore Lindy straight after. Lulu takes care of Richard while her parents finally find their way back to each other. They agree to try again. Lindy says she wants to write about everything she went through at miniature size, and Les tells her he loves that idea. The story ends with Vivian walking along the street and spotting something tiny on the pavement. It's Nils. He thought he was finally free, but he isn't. But that's where the video ends. Let me know what you think about this series and comment, and thanks for watching.